And we are live. Very, very good morning to you, Rajat. Welcome to SIVM Pune. And we look forward to hearing your thoughts. We've almost 300 students live on our YouTube link. And let me request Sharanya to introduce you formally before we get started.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back after the break. Our next speaker for today is Mr. Rajat Mathur, an alumnus from the batch of 1993 from the Masters in Personal Management program. He is the managing director of Morgan Stanley. A veteran of the HR finance world, he has worked with organizations such as JP Morgan Chase and Deutsche Bank, where he was the director HR. He has been with Morgan Stanley for about 10 years now and has been the MD since 2016. We hope that this interaction with Sir will help students get a unique perspective from an HR leader leading a finance organization, and we are eager to hear from him. Thank you for joining us today, sir. I request you to kindly address the awaiting audience.
Over to you, Rajat. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Saranya. Thank you, Professor. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Interestingly,
Yes.
that becomes the first statement that everyone makes when we start any virtual session. Uh, to all of you students out there, firstly, congratulations. It's a great choice that you have made in picking Symbiosis to do your post graduation. I was sitting in that chair 29 years ago, listening to someone from the industry talk about what lies ahead. And I recall then that I thought to myself that I'd made a good choice. And 29 years later, I still think that I made a really good choice in going to Symbiosis. So congratulations and welcome to the Symbiosis family. Uh, I don't think any of us would have imagined that as you started your post-graduation journey, that you would be doing this in this virtual world. So here's to a new experience that you will reflect on many, many years later when you start to talk about how you started your Symbiosis journey. But let's make the best of what is available to us, and let's sort of make sure that we enjoy this induction process. I'm sure very soon you would return back to the campus, and that's when all the fun starts. So before I sort of share my thoughts and my experience in terms of work life and what lies ahead for you, I thought I'll share with you a couple of my learnings from what I believe was at college. And so my first advice to all of you is that in Symbiosis you should have fun. In the 2 years that you spend here, you should make sure that you have fun. Now, when I say that, obviously, all of the faculty who's listening in sort of get themselves in a bit of a twist because they say, "Hey, Rajat saying have fun. Does that mean that they compromise on all the other stuff in terms of education?" And the answer is no. So here's the caveat. Build based on the fun that you have at campus because that's what you're going to remember. But at no point of time should you compromise the education, the expectation from your faculty, the expectation from the institute, because that's paramount to making sure that you have a good, successful start out of college. But have fun. And I'm going to tell you that we had our 25th reunion a couple of years ago, and all that we spoke about and all the memories that we sort of reflected on was about all the fun activities that we did on campus. So make sure that you're doing that in the 2 years that you're. Just added on to that is my second sort of recommendation to you, which is to make as many friends as you can on campus. These are the folks that are going to be with you for the rest of your lives as colleagues, as friends, as partners in some cases. But these are the ones that you're always going to rely on for the next 2-3 decades that you're going to be in the work environment. And more sometimes. I've only experienced 3 decades, so I'm talking about 3 decades. Make sure that you make friends, make sure that you use this group as the primary network that you will have and that you will leverage in the years to come. My third piece of advice to you from a college standpoint is experiment. Try different things, try and use any opportunity that you get. Don't reject an opportunity or a experience based on what you think about it. Make a decision about the experience after you have experienced it. And there are going to be plenty of things, right? From internships to participating in student bodies to events to to just classroom related work and projects. Just make sure that you experiment and try and have fun, and really sort of leverage in terms of opportunities at Symbiosis. And the fourth one, and I'm just going to mention it now, but I'm going to talk about it in a little more detail subsequently, is about building a hobby or an interest. And that for me is a very important one, because that's what's going to keep you sane and anchored to life. And I'm going to talk about it in a little while. So those are, as far as I'm concerned, the four key things that you should be focused on at college. Obviously, it does mean that you will continue to do what you need to do in college, which means get an education, which means that you graduate and graduate well, so that you get a good platform out of college. So that's a given, and I'm not focused on that. But those four things, having fun, making friends, and building a network, taking opportunities and experimenting, and keeping an interest outside of education are the four things that you absolutely should be focused on. I'm going to share a story and a learning that I had 2 days after I started working. So this is a story from about 27 years ago. Sorry, and I sort of still remember it and remember the lesson from that very well. And I thought I'll share that one story with you, and then really talk about some of the things that you want to build towards at the work experience. So this was almost exactly 27 years ago. This was my second day at work, and I started my career, if you've sort of seen my bio, with a large IT services company. Second day at work, this was the first day of the induction program, day of work we'd spent trying to get all our badges done and our seating done and our and the other administrative forms, etc. done. So this was first day of induction, and the session was to start at 9 o'clock in the morning. And this is Mumbai. I was new to Mumbai. I didn't belong to Mumbai, so I didn't necessarily know how the local trains really work. But I sort of experimented with the local trains over the weekend before the start of my work life, and generally knew how local trains functioned. And for those of you who are from Mumbai or who have been to Mumbai and traveled on the local train, you will know and realize that it's not the easiest place to get in, and sometimes it's not the easiest place to get out from. But anyway, I was told that if I take the 7:59 train from Andheri station, I will get to Nariman Point to my office before 9 o'clock for the start of the program. So I got to the station, and when the 7:59 train came, it was so crowded that I just couldn't manage. Remember, this was my first real experience of crowd in a Mumbai local train. So anyway, I missed the 7:59 train, and then the 8:01 train came, and I still couldn't get in. And then the 8:03 train came in, and I still couldn't get in. And I suspect that all of you who are from Mumbai are now laughing about this, because at some point of time in your life you would have seen an outsider in Mumbai struggle with getting into the local train. But that's exactly what the experience was for me. Eventually, at about 8:11, I managed to get pushed into it. But by the time I got to the office and got to my induction floor, and I did run from the station to the office to try and make it in time, I was about 30 minutes late. And so when I got to the door and I knocked on the door, there was an elderly gentleman who was conducting the first session. He stopped, he looked at me, and then he waved me in to take my place. And I came in and I said, sorry, I'm late. And I sat down, and then I opened my briefcase. We used to carry briefcases at that time. Pulled out my book and pulled out my pen and sat down. And all this time, he sort of stood there quiet waiting for me to settle. I must have taken maybe a minute to settle down, but I did sort of this thing. And once I had settled down and I looked up to him, he took a deep breath and he said to the class, he said, if you're not on time, it shows that you don't care. So, and I'm going to repeat this one time. He said, if not on time, it shows that you don't care. And I heard that, and my first reaction was to, get up and respond back, trying to explain to him why I was late and how I was new to Mumbai and how I, struggled to get into the train. And as I started to speak, he raised his hand and he said to me, he said, son, I know you want to respond to that comment, but I want you to come back and give me the response exactly a week later. So I sat down in the class and I was fuming. I was really angry. I was really upset that he had said that I care, and obviously I didn't hear a thing of what he said over the next 4 hours because I was still in my head thinking about, I need to tell him that I couldn't get into the train, and I needed to tell him that I was new to Mumbai, etc. Anyway, so that 4 hours went by, and I was still thinking about it. I looked at the calendar of the training schedule, and I saw that the same gentleman had 4 other classes scheduled in over the next 1 week. So the next session that he had was the following day, and that started at 2:00. And we had a lunch break between 1 and 2 in the afternoon. And I finished my lunch quickly. I was done by 1:30. By 1:40, I was in the class in the front bench to make sure that he saw me, that I was early for his class. And obviously he walked in and he saw me and he smiled at me. He didn't say anything, but I was sort of feeling pleased that I had shown to him that I could be on time. The next one was was starting at 9:00 in the morning the next day, and I, instead of taking the 7:59 train, I got up early. I got into the 7:00 train, which fortunately was a little quieter. I got in an hour and 15 minutes before the session, and when he walked in at 9:00, I was again there on the front bench, head held high, making sure that he noticed me. The same thing repeated in 2 subsequent classes that he had. I was there on time, etc. And so the week went by, and I was feeling very pleased with myself, saying that, look, proven to him that I can be on time, in fact, earlier than required. And I want to sort of let him know that, the first time it was a genuine mistake. So anyway, I waited the week, and when the week was over and he had this last session and he had finished the session, when everyone had gone, I walked up to him and I said, you asked me to come back and tell you why I was late on the first day, and here I am. I wanted to tell you that. And he stopped me and he said, son, I actually don't want you to tell me why you were late on the first day. What I want you to tell me is why you were early on the other 4 days. And I was flummoxed. I said, that's not the answer I prepared for. I've been thinking for a week to answer to the question of why I wasn't prepared to answer why I was early for the other classes. But anyway, I gathered my thoughts and I said to him, because I wanted to prove that I could be on time. And he said to me, he says, that was my point. My point was that if you really genuinely cared about something, you would be on time. And I didn't know how to react. And then when I sort of started to really think about it, I realized that the reason why I was getting in 20 minutes early and 30 minutes early, and in one case, an hour and 15 minutes for the class, was because I wanted to make a point, and I really cared about proving to the individual that I could be on time. And that sort of gave me a very interesting lesson in life that I've sort of adhered to for all my life. The fact that it's very important not just to worry about your own time, but also to make sure that you are taking care of other people's time and respecting other people's time. And it's 20 years now since I learned that lesson, and almost every day I think about that lesson, and I make sure that my life revolves around being very, very disciplined about about time. I, I'm very particular about it, and I think it is the one thing that a lot of my colleagues and my subordinates call me out for, in terms of the fact that I'm almost never ever late for a meeting, or something to do. And the reason why I'm sharing this story with you is that it's not just about showing up for a meeting. It's about, when you have to deliver an assignment on time, or when you have to deliver, when you commit to someone, and you sort of call up the individual or a friend and say, "Hey, I'll be there in 5 minutes," and then you don't show up for an hour because you're actually not 5 minutes away. That, when you sort of start to think about it, and when that happens to you, you realize how unpleasant that experience is. And I think I want you to really contemplate and think about this. Make sure that whatever you are doing in your life, that you are in time and doing it. You will never ever miss deadlines. I promise you, you will never ever miss, flights. uh, we don't, or it's rare that someone actually misses a flight. You don't miss a flight because you get in early, because you know that there is a repercussion on missing a flight. It costs you money. The same logic and the same principle should be applied to anything and everything that you do in life. Make sure that you're doing it well within the time frame. It's the one lesson that has stayed with me, and it's the one lesson I want to share with you. It is going to hold you in really good stead. Uh, there's a very funny story that's associated with that. I remember that uh, we were going off on a holiday, two friends, and we were supposed to catch a train in from the New Delhi railway station. And there was a rally that was going on that day, and both of us got stuck in the rally. We were in different vehicles, but we both got stuck in the rally, and he reached and ran to the station, and we didn't have mobile phones at that time, so we didn't know where each other was. But he ran to the station, and he saw the train, sort of the last compartment of the train, leave the station. So he just missed it by perhaps a minute or 30 seconds to a minute. And he thought I was on the platform. And 5-10 minutes later, I came huffing into the platform, and I saw him over there, and he had this sheepish grin on his face, and he said to me, he says, uh, "You missed the train by 10 minutes. I missed it only by a minute. I'm better at missing the train than you are." And I sort of think about that comment of his, and I laugh all the time, because at the end of the day, we both missed the train. It wasn't about who was better at missing the train. At the end of the day, we both missed the train. But I think that those are lessons that you need to sort of reflect on, in terms of, it's not about comparison. It's not about how everyone else is late and therefore you can afford to be late. It's about what you need to hold your own standards to, in terms of discipline. So that's one story I just wanted to share with you. I have another story that I will come back to probably towards the later part of this conversation. But I wanted to sort of shift gear and speak to you about three things that are probably going to hold you in good stead during your work life. So I'm going to talk to you, and this is really related to the sort of situation that we are going through with this pandemic over there. Um, if you sort of look at what's happening in the environment and what's happening to the people in the corporate world, you'll realize that different individuals have reacted and adapted and adopted to this new normal that they're calling, in very different ways. And I sort of wanted to just share three key anchors that could help you when things don't go as planned. And 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 again, it's important for you to think about them, and it's, at the end of the day, going to be an individual choice that you will make in terms of what you want to do with those three things. So I'm going to talk about three forms of resilience that you need to build for yourselves. Uh, Number one is mental resilience. The second one is physical resilience. And the third one is financial resilience. resilience. And I'm in reverse order. So I'm going to talk about financial resilience first. One of the reasons why you're joining an MBA program is because you want a good launching pad and be able to earn money so that you can do things that you love to do in your lives, right? And I bet you, if you haven't done this already, you would very soon be having these conversations with colleagues and friends and parents and family about want to make X amount of money, after which you're going to hang up your boots and retire and do the things that you would that you really want to do, whether it's travel or following a passion or an interest or whatever it may be. Right? A lot of us think about it. A lot of us think about saying, let me make my first 10 million or 5 million or whatever else the number may be, and then once I've got that, then I'm done. Financial resilience is about the ability to think and plan about that goal, right? So it's easy to say, I'm going to retire at 35 when I've earned X million rupees. And interestingly, when we were in college, we used to say, I'm going to make my first million before I'm 30. And then you realize that actually a million is only 10 lakh rupees. But then it was about making the statement about saying, I'm going to make my first million before I'm X, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to retire at 35 or retire at 40. But what I'm trying to get, it's great goals, and it's great if you have those plans for the guys who are going to be doing entrepreneurship and building their own setups, etc. You want to build an organization of X size by so and so time. All those are great things to do, but you need to plan for it. And financial resilience, like I said, is about planning for it. So my number one advice to you as far as financial resilience is concerned is to start planning about it, and then start to executing as early as you can about it. If it means investing or saving, make sure that with your first paycheck, and sometimes even before the first paycheck happens, during your etc., you're putting money aside to make sure that you're comfortable when something like this happens. And pandemic is just an example. There could be other circumstances and other things that happen in your life where your earning capacity or capability may be disadvantaged, and it's important for you to then have the resilience to be able to tide over that period. And that, if there's a job loss or a furlough or a cut in compensation because of stuff happening around you, or the macro environment changing, you are able to sort of just wait through that. It's extremely important. It's extremely important that you're focused on making sure that you're building yourself some financial resilience. For a lot of you, this would probably be the first time that you're stepping out of your homes, and having to manage your own finances. I think it's important for you, irrespective of what function you're going to specialize in, that you learn a little bit of finance. And I say that now after 29 years. I wish I had done more. I wish I'd known my finances much better in the earlier part of my career. But clearly, I think it's important that you sort of focus on it. So that's my sort of word of advice as far as financial resilience is concerned. The second one is what I call physical resilience, and this is again something that I'm sort of very passionate about. The need for all of you to remain physically active is important. And the importance sort of comes into the forefront when you obviously age. And I know I'm asking you to think about all of this 20 years out or 25 years out, but if you're healthy and fit at an age where you have then the money available to you, then you can really relish your life. You can really do stuff that you always wanted to do or aspired to do. But if you are unhealthy, then you'll be struggling with medical and medical related aspects rather than sort of traveling and doing anything and everything that you would love to do. So make sure that you're focused on your health and physical well-being. the age bracket of, and I sort of call this out loosely, but the age bracket of 21 to about 35 is probably the worst in being able to take care of your physical health. Although, logically, it should be the time when you should be at the peak of your health and well-being. And that's largely because we'd be so focused on building our careers and focusing on work, and probably even ending up doing long hours and irregular meals, that it starts to take a toll on your body. Uh, the way to do this is to build an interest in a physical activity now in college. And I don't mean that you have to do extreme crazy stuff, right? Some people yoga works, or just or running works, or cycling works, or whatever, or even the gym works, right? Whatever it is, I think if you're able to build and sustain an interest on your physical well-being now, it will tide you over this 21 to 35 year age bracket, where you're going to be really pressed around taking care of your health and well-being. uh, and the reason why I sort of stop at 35 is because at 35 you're going to have a little bit of a midlife crisis, and you'll realize how important it is to your health. And then, depending on what your experience has been and what your interest has been, either you will pick it up or let it pass, and then the outcome will be for everyone else to see. So extremely important that you focus on your physical well-being. And the last one really is mental well-being. So firstly, just a quick comment about mental well-being. And I know that you're seeing a lot of press and a lot of commentary around mental well-being. Uh, it's obviously directly related to your financial well-being and your physical well-being, but it's important to recognize the fact that this is an integral part of your well-being. And the reason why I again say that is because this is the one thing that typically is not very noticeable. And this is where your network comes into being. If you have close friends and family who you have given the right to talk to you about your mental well-being, if they notice something wrong, then I think it's a great feedback loop for you to have, to be able to make sure that you're trending on the right path. For me, the simple definition of mental well-being is happy hours. And I know what you're thinking when I say happy hours. It's not the happy hours that you're thinking about when you get discount on your drinks at the bar. It's the number of hours that you can spend in a happy state of mind during the day, right? Um, and look, it's true that there'll be times where the macro environment will make your life stressful, where there are going to be things happening around you that you can't control, which will stress you out, etc., and impact the number of happy hours that you have in a day. But the focus for all of you and all of us should always be, how many happy hours can you have in a day? And this is where I think the comment that I made about finding a passion or an interest comes into being. Because work is going to be generally a stress inducer, not a stress reducer. What you need to find for yourself is a stress reducer. Typically, it's a passion, an interest that can keep your mind occupied and and you engaged, so that you can have some me time perhaps and reflect on happier thoughts than what the environment is throwing at you. For me, it's activities, it's running, it's cycling, it's stuff that I love to do. For others, it is hobbies like painting or music or something. Whatever it is, it's very important that you find this anchor for yourself. This is the one anchor that will stay with you for life, and this will be your sort of release of the steam that's building in your pressure cooker, uh, to be able to leverage and do stuff to relax you. If you are mentally happy, if you're physically, and if you're financially happy, not necessarily in that order, then I can promise you that you'll have a good life. So I do want you to sort of focus on these three parameters, and I'm happy to sort of answer any questions that you may have when we do get to the question and answer session in terms of any of these three sort of resilience that you need to build for yourself in your life and career. I'm going to share one more example. I know we are at the 30-minute mark, but I'm going to share with you one more example. Open it up for question. It's actually not an example. It's a very interesting story, and again, it's related to some level at this whole experience that we are going through in the pandemic. If you sort of look around you, and you can do that in your homes where you're dialing in from, and look around at the people in your house, or look at your friends and talk to your friends, you will realize that different people have reacted differently to this pandemic, right? Some are actually constantly worried about what's happening around you, and rightly so. They have their reasons. Some are constantly worried about what's going to happen tomorrow. Some are constantly worried about themselves. Some are worried about other family members. But generally, there are people who are worried. There are people who are, say, neutral, and there are people who have leveraged an opportunity to do things. Uh, I think it's very important for you to decide which bucket you want to fall into. And I'm going to talk to you about this concept that one of my bosses taught to me many years ago. So we were going for a meeting in a car. I was driving and he was in the co-passenger seat, and we got stuck in a traffic jam. This is a little bit of a habit for me. This whole thing about getting stuck in traffic jams and getting stuck in rallies, etc. But somehow I learned my stories when I'm stuck in traffic jams, I guess. But we were stuck in a traffic jam, and we fortunately had a little bit of time on our side, because from the lesson that I learned about being on time, I would always start much earlier than wanted, sort of the annoyance of my boss, and these days also to the annoyance of my family. But I do sort of keep enough buffer time to go there. Anyway, we were in traffic jam and we got stuck, and a couple of minutes into being stuck in the traffic jam, I started to get irritated, and I started to honk on the car and slam my dashboard and roll my window down and look outside and generally get agitated about it. And I kept doing this for 5 minutes, and then my boss, who was sitting next to me, his name was Michael, he sort of turned around and looked at me and he said, "So, uh, with blowing the horn and slamming on the dashboard and rolling down the window and shouting expletives, have you managed to clear the traffic jam?" And I sort of wrinkled up my nose and I said, "No, I'm just annoyed." And he says, "But how have the actions that you have taken in terms of blowing the horn and slamming the dashboard, etc., helped?" Uh, and I said, they haven't helped." And he says, "Yes, because the traffic jam is outside of your locus of control." Uh, and I said, "So what should I do?" And he says, "Nothing. Switch on the music, put on some good music, and let's listen to some music and let's chat." And and it didn't sort of hit me then, but as I started to reflect on that interaction, I realized this concept of locus of control. And I started to think about locus of control, and I realized that if and when you look at a situation and you are able to identify whether it's in your locus of control or not, then the chances are that once you figure out that it's outside your locus of control, you're going to stop worrying about it, or at least lessen the worry around it. Now, I also realize that it's not easy to practice, because worrying sort of comes naturally to us, but it is a great stress reducer. So, looking out of the window and getting stressed about the fact that it's going to rain, you can't control it, right? Instead, you should be focused on, okay, if it rains, this is what to do, and get on with your life. If you're stuck in a traffic jam, appreciate the fact that yes, you're stuck in a traffic jam and you can't do anything about it. Blowing the horn is only going to irritate others, so you might as well listen to music or call up someone and speak to them and have a chat. But it's very important that you realize what you can control and what you can't control, and it's the same which is holding true in this pandemic. Can you control what the infection rate is? The You can make the argument that yes, you can practice, social distancing and staying at home and everything else, and I agree that's true. But can you really control what some of the other folks are doing? The answer is no. Therefore, can you control what the infection rate is going to look like? The answer is probably no, at least not in your immediate locus of control. So stop worrying about it. Figure out what you can do in the time that you have at home when you're not in your classes or when you're not at work or not doing active stuff. I mean, you probably have 10,000 photographs on your phone and on your laptop. Sort them out. You have documents that you can sort them out. I have a friend of mine who decided that he's going to paint his entire house while he's in lockdown, and so he's painting his house over there. My point is that there are always positive things that you can find to do instead of worrying about things that are outside of your locus of control. So that's my second lesson. First lesson, if you're not on time, it shows you don't care. Second lesson, don't worry about stuff that's outside of your locus of control. It will just make and simplify your life and make it much better. Those are the things I want with you. I do want to share a parting thought, which is really about you as an individual. We let me phrase this well. Have you ever had an experience where your phone has rung, and on the phone is the name of the individual that who's calling you? That name has popped up, and you've looked at the phone, and your reaction has been, "Oh God, not him or her," and I don't really want to talk to him or her. If it's happened with you, think about why you are reacting to that individual's name on the phone like that, and then think about whether it might be happening when you're calling someone up and your name is flashing on the phone, and someone else is sort of cringing their noses and saying, "Geez, I don't want to talk to this person," or "Not now." Or are they reacting and saying, "Hey, so and so person's calling, I'd love to have a chat with them," and picking up the phone and speaking to you? And it's a function of how you are and who you are. It's got a lot to do with how you behave with people. It's got a lot to do with what positivity you bring to the environment and the attitude that you bring to the table. So my sort of parting lesson on this one is that whatever actions you're taking, whatever things you're doing for yourself and for others, always think about what would happen when you call someone up and call the person up. Would the person gleefully accept your call and want to talk to you, or would the person basically press the ignore button and not want to talk to you because he or she expects that the conversation is going to be negative and draining and stressful? So think about it. The persona that you need to build for yourself is a persona where people would love to have a chat with you, or love to have a conversation with you, or want to even call you and have a conversation with you. So that's my last piece of advice. Build the positivity around you, build your positive picture, because I think that's going to hold you in good stead across everything that you will do in your life. I'm gonna take a break. I'm gonna stop now, and I'm gonna sort of hand it over back to Prof for any Q&As that I have for you. I do want to sort of end by saying, look, all the best for this journey. It's an exciting time for you. It's probably a very different experience that you're having now, but I'm hoping that all of you are going to be back in office and at some point back at college, and at some point of time we will be able to interact with you face to face and have this chat over a cup of coffee. Good luck to all of you, and hope to stay in touch. Over to you, Prof. I think you're on mute, Prof.
Thanks a ton, Rajat. Thanks for those very practical, very earthy advice to our young minds. Some of them really resonated. Your focus on punctuality and its impact on professionalism, and it just demonstrates and shows your respect for other people's time. And I particularly liked your story about the Mumbai local train and who was more later than the others. As someone who had the Mumbai local train from Andheri to Churchgate in my first job for 3 years, I can just see that picture. Your point about locus of control was so valid and so true for the current times, where a lot of people are spending the large part of their brains on what they can't control, etc. So wonderful advice, in including the one on the persona and your disposition as you appear to others. Boys and girls, the floor is now open for questions. Please write your questions on the comment section, and we will request Rajat to answer some of them. Please post your questions. Rajat, there's a time lag between the time they post their questions. There's about a 10-15 second lag between the stream and what we see. So I'll
Sure.
pick up some of the questions and share them with you as they come in, and then we'll answer them. And many thanks for the strict timelines that you so well followed. Thanks a ton. Boys and girls, over to you for the questions. I'm looking at the comment section on the chat box. Wow, there's a whole barrage of questions. Let me take a look at some of them. Okay. So Rajat, I've put up the first question from Jay Kumar Purohit.
Yeah. Do you want me to read the question?
No. You can just go ahead and answer it.
Okay, so this is about a mantra on how you manage time. I think great question, Jayakumar. I think we will always have to, throughout your life, you're going to have to make choices in terms of prioritizing. I think fundamentally that's what you need to learn. What's important, why is it important, and why you need to do that as a priority versus any other activity. I think the other skill that therefore you will need to build to manage your life is the ability to say no. And it's not just the ability to say no to certain things, but the ability to say no nicely. So we will always have a barrage of things that your bosses will expect you to do, your family will be expecting you to do. Your time will constantly be under pressure, and I think the best thing you can do is to make sure that you prioritize. Interestingly, and I love to talk about time and time management. It's sort of very close to my heart. When you start to think about it, there's a lot of folks who say, I don't have time. But when you really sort of step back and start to diagnose your day, you will realize that there are so many time wasters that you have in your life. And I'll give you a simple example. I'm a big preacher for health and wellness and exercising regularly, and I have a lot of youngsters who come to me and say, but we don't have the time, we work 12 hours a day. And my response to them is, and how many hours of Netflix do you watch, or how many hours of television do you watch? And typically the answer is, I do it for an hour or an hour and a half, but that's my relaxing time. And I say, great, why don't you relax while doing exercise? So I'll give you my example, right? I was hooked on to a series on one of these channels, and because I was so hooked onto that, I was starting to neglect my exercise, and I made a rule for myself, and I said I only watch that series when I'm exercising. So I would put it on my stationary bike, and as long as the series was going on, I would be watching. I needed to cycle. If I stopped cycling, the rule was I had to switch off the series. So if I wanted to watch 3 episodes, guess what? I had to cycle for 2.5 hours. So there are things that you can sort of put rules for yourself to be able to manage that, but it's about really prioritizing and making sure that you manage that. Long-winded answer to that question.
Wonderful. The next question is from Karan Khatri, who's asking about how do you manage the right balance between people, strategies, and actions?
Karan, I think it's again about priorities. I think let's talk about people. I think you should be able to discern very quickly the folks that you want to spend time with and folks that you don't want to spend time with, and it'll be governed by obviously a set of principles that you have in your mind, but it'll largely be about people that make you happy, and that people that you learn from versus people that are draining to you. So I think it's important to do that. It's the same with strategies. It's the same with action. Look, I always believe, and I've seen that, that everyone gets through their work life. You really have to struggle. Actually, let me rephrase that. You really have to make an effort to be unsuccessful, right? There are very few individuals who are what I call unsuccessful. Generally speaking, everyone sort of gets onto the train and moves in the right direction. The speed of which you move could be different. But if I look at my batch and I look at the folks who were top of the class in academics, etc., they've done well. But equally, the guys like me who were sort of lagging behind a little bit as far as acad output was concerned have done reasonably well for ourselves. So I think it's a function of your attitude more than anything else in terms of making sure that. But it's again about making choices. It's always about making choices.
Great answer. Rajat, the next question is, sir, how different is an HR role in fintech companies like Morgan Stanley versus other industries like FMCG?
Okay, great question. And I've sort of experienced technology, I've experienced FMCG, and I've experienced financial services firms. The root remains the same. So the fundamentals that are practiced in any industry are pretty much the same as far as an HR function is concerned. I will sort of go out and say that about 70% of what you do as a function remain the same, right? The 30% variance is a function of not just the industry that you're in, but also the sort of life stage of the life cycle where the industry is in. So you could have a startup fintech, which would be very different in terms of the HR experience. You could have a mature fintech or a fin organization, which is very different in terms of experience. One would be about establishing and setting up practices. One would be about making sure that you are steadying the ship and doing delta improvements. In FMCGs, maybe the pace of some of the activities that you do could be very different. But fundamentally, would performance management systems run in all organizations? The answer is probably yes. Would compensation cycles run in every organization? The answer is yes. Would you be hiring in all organizations? So 70% of your stuff will pretty much be the same.
Great. Rajat, next question is from Mehak Solanki, who's asking, as a student of MBA Innovation and Entrepreneurship, could you please share a few situations in your career where you acted as an entrepreneur?
So I had the distinct pleasure of going off and setting up my own company many years ago, and so I was very interested in the outdoors and adventures. So I'm going to say about 20 years ago now. About 20 years ago, I decided that I'm going to be an entrepreneur because it appeared that the entrepreneurs were free and having a life that they loved and no bosses and everything else. And so I went and set up my company, and I would run summer camps for children up in the hills, teaching them survival skills. And I did that for a few years. In terms of the experience, I think it was a fantastic learning experience because it taught me, the fundamentals of finance, marketing, business development, operations, HR, and anything else in between. It was a very stressful environment because clearly financially, I didn't do that well. And when the dot-com bust happened, then we basically had to shut that down because we ran into losses. But from an experience and learning standpoint, it was just huge. I think for me, the perhaps the biggest learning was the fact that you need to really prepare well about thinking and think through how you're going to run that business and how you're going to make sure that it becomes a profitable venture. It's great if you have a passion and you're running it as a passion, but you have to make it sustainable. If you don't make it sustainable, you're going to struggle. But from a learning experience, boy, I wouldn't trade it for anything else.
Great. Thank you. The next question from Akshay Karthik is, do you see a paradigm shift in the fact that people are taught more on how to succeed rather than dealing with failures?
Unfortunate but true. Uh, Really unfortunate but true. I think the role models are usually people who have succeeded. And I think it's very important for you to also speak to people who haven't been successful. Now, unfortunately, not people who haven't been who haven't been successful don't necessarily like to talk about it. But if ever I get an opportunity, Prof, I'm happy to sort of come in and tell you about my experience of running a startup, doing very well in the initial phase, and then when I tried to scale it up, how it all crashed down. I'm very happy to share that experience because it is a learning experience. But you're absolutely right, Akshay. I think we don't focus on failures other than our own failures, and sometimes I think you need to hear stories of people who have failures to share, because I think those are much stronger learnings.
Absolutely wonderful answer, and we'll take you up on that, Rajat. Just a small data point here, Rajat. We also have a very famous alumni from the finance industry. His name is Vikas Jimri, who holds a senior leadership position in Deutsche, and he climbed Mount Everest year before last, and he told me that it was his second attempt, and he had actually not managed to succeed in his first attempt. And we are hoping we can invite him to talk to our young minds and share how he climbed that mountain, first in his mind and then physically as well. And that takes some doing, climbing Mount Everest.
And that's a great story because I know about the team that he was on. Again, because I also had a similar interest, and so I'm very close to the story that the three of them, Vikas and two others, went through. So I think it's a great one to share with the students.
Sure. Aditya R is asking, hi sir, there's a stigma for a person in HR that CHRO is the ceiling when it comes to growth, but you seem to be an exception to that. Can you please share your thoughts on the same?
So I think, generally speaking, that's true. I think the ability to do more beyond an HR role is really up to you. There are opportunities. I think the advantage of an HR person is that you have access to leadership like no one else, right? If you build credibility within for yourself and the function, the access to leadership is huge. When you have that, that presents an opportunity to also learn about stuff outside of it. I'm a firm believer of the fact that if you're going to be an HR person and a successful HR person, you should know the business better than the business person. And if you're able to understand and articulate your business better, then there's no reason why you can't do more. I think we are now seeing that this sort of this sort of paradigm break now. There are lots of folks who spend time in HR, gone out and done stuff, and then come back. I did a stint in operations many moons ago, tried it out. I did that whole entrepreneurial experiment, came back to HR. There are people now, there are business leaders that are now wanting to come and work in HR. And that's the other thing that you're starting to see. So I think the sort of walls are breaking now, but it's really up to you in terms of being able to show and demonstrate your ability and your skill to do that.
Thank you,
See,
Rajat.
I think generally speaking, the world has become a lot more permeable. The boundary lines that had been created about, here's your specialization and therefore this is all you can do has gone away. I mean, when we grew up and and you probably, some of you know this, you had 3 or 4 options. If you didn't hit those 3 or 4 options, then you would, they said, struggle in life, right? Today the options are plenty, so you could be specializing in something in college and then going out and doing something completely different, and you will find plenty of examples like that.
Great. Thank you, Rajat. We are kind of coming to the end of our time, but one last question from Arjun, who says, Sir, we've heard that the 2 years is going to be grilling in terms of syllabi and tests. Can you give us some tips on managing this effectively and creating a positive study social balance?
Yeah, study hard. Look, uh, here's something uh, if you pay attention in class, right, the chances are that you will have to read and study much lesser when you go back to your room. If you get and see the professor smiling, which means that I've hit a right note over here. But it's amazing how much you can learn by just sitting there and listening to someone talk about it. When you have to do the same thing on your own and read about it, not only do you have to spend the time to read about it, but you also have to spend time then understand and appreciate that. But when you do that in the classroom, you're much better. So my single biggest advice is, when in the class, just focus on the class. There will be times when it becomes challenging, and we all accept that, but where it is possible, do that. I think my second piece of advice to this is stay with the plan. If you start to lag behind, then the catch-up process is extremely taxing. And this is when I go back to my rule about saying, be on time. If you're on time, it shows you care. It make your professors happy. You'll be able to stay through this. Look, you're not the first batch that's going through this, right? There are, I don't know, 40, 50 batches that have gone through this and have survived and are, sitting in front of you 29 years later, still smiling, which means that you will get through it. It's about making sure that you can get through it with as many happy hours as you can in your day.
Rajat, how I wish I could have studied with you. I'm NMIMS class of 86, kind of close, but how I wish I could have studied with you. But
oh, we had fun. Believe me, we had so much fun. I'm telling you, the 25-year reunion that we had, 2 days that we spent together, we spent the 48 hours rolling on the floor, laughing, because we were reflecting on all of the things that happened to us in those 2 years. So don't miss that opportunity to create memories while you're doing everything with the guides.
And these bonds will stay with us for a lifetime. These bonds have no transactions attached.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Rajat. Let me now hand over to Sharanya for a formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your insights on the 4 key things to focus on at college, or the 3 forms of resilience to build. Your relatable stories on the importance of time, locus of control, and your parting note on how to build positivity around us has definitely motivated us. And we will try to incorporate these lessons in our day-to-day lives. So thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rajat. Stay well, stay safe, and we look forward to seeing you face to face in the not too distant future. Heartfelt thanks to you.
Thank you so much, Professor, and thank you, Saranya, and to all of you on this call. Again, I'm going to repeat Professor's words: stay safe, stay calm, stay happy. This will pass, and you will be back in office at college sooner than later, hopefully. Thank you.
Bye, Rajat. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Boys and girls, I'm ending the broadcast now. Thank you for your time and attention.